Hello everyone, welcome to Dental Mate. First of all, thank you for this beautiful abundant family. Today, in this video, we'll be talking about classical conditioning theory. The contents would include introduction, bell dog experiment, principles, and dental applications. Let's get started. So, first of all, classical conditioning theory was given by Ivan Pavlov, who was a Russian psychologist in 1927. So, classical conditioning theory is of Ivan Pavlov in 1927. The basic motto or the basic thought of Ivan Pavlov behind this theory was unassociated stimulus could produce reflexive behavior. Okay, so this was the basic line which Ivan Pavlov thought, and he has given this theory. This theory is also known as theory of contracted response or reflex, theory of spontaneous action, or theory of reaction. And this comes under theory of learning and development of behavior. So in this theory, there is a specific learning which is associated with some kind of stimulus. This produces a reflex. Okay. Now, Ivan Pavlov, he was experimenting, or he was studying the parotid glands of dogs, and he found out certain things based on which he has given the classical conditioning theory. So what happens, what he saw was when food was kept in front of the dog, he started salivating. Okay, so with this we can say that food, which is the unconditioned stimulus. Why is it known as unconditioned stimulus? Because food, when it is kept in front of anyone, he or she or that person, that human being starts salivation. So here when the dog is salivating, this is the unconditioned response. Why? Because that is a natural phenomenon. The salivary glands are stimulated and the dog starts salivating. This is before conditioning. Next, when there is a sound of bell. This sound of bell, this is the neutral stimulus. Why? Why is it called as neutral stimulus as of now? Because bell sound can never produce salivation. So with the sound of bell, there was no salivation and no conditioned response. Now, what he did was he started giving the dog food, and at the same time he started to ring the bell. So when food and bell, they were given together, so he rang the bell and he gave the food. So what happened? The dog started salivating. Now, since here salivation was there, this is also an unconditioned response. Why unconditioned response? Because the food is present here. So since the dog is salivating in the presence of food, this is known as unconditioned response. Also, what he was doing was he was ringing the bell here. So the dog, he started correlating that whenever the bell would ring, he would have food and then he would start eating. Now, this was the conditioning what he did to the dog. After conditioning, what was seen that only when the bell was rung, here the bell became conditioned stimulus. Why conditioned stimulus? Because earlier during the period of conditioning, bell was given, when the bell was rung, the food was given to the dog. So here now bell became the conditioned stimulus. What was the conditioning which was done? Food was given along with the bell. So the dog started salivating. This is the conditioned response. This was the basis of the classical conditioning theory of Ivan Pavlov. And with this theory, he told that this is the theory of learning and development of behavior which the child implies through his lifetime. So the classical conditioning theory, it operates by a simple process of association of one stimulus with other. So here, this stimulus, which was the bell, it was associated with meat or food, and salivation was occurring. That is, response was coming from the dog. So this is known as learning by association, which the child performs or does during his or her lifetime period. Okay. So if we look at certain examples of this, whenever a child sees a white coat or doctor, and he has, after the checkup, he has certain painful responses. So what does he does? He associates white coat with pain, or he is learning a new response from the environment by conditioning. What is the conditioning? Whenever he sees a white coat or a doctor, because of the past experiences or because of this experience, he is associating white coat with pain. So what happens is, when a child visits a doctor, he has certain unpleasant experiences because of that. He tries to relate the white coat, which is not generally seen. The child is not familiar with a person who is wearing such white coat. So the child tries to connect this white coat with pain. He is acquiring something. This is known as acquisition. Next, what happens is, this child, whenever he or she sees anybody who is wearing a white coat, be it any doctor, Dr. A, B, or C, he relates that, no, I have to stay away from this person because I'll be having pain. This is what is generalization means. He tries to connect that if ever I go close to someone who is wearing a white coat, I would have pain. With that, the child now becomes fearful. Now, when this fearful child goes to different white coat doctors and sees that he is not having any pain, then what happens? His pain tries to extend. Okay, there is extinction of pain. So when a fearful child, he has a thought in his mind that whenever I would go to a white coat doctor, I would have pain. But when this child goes to the doctor and he is not having any pain, so there is an extinction of this pain, or the extinction of the conditioned reflex. Subsequently, what happens with time, what the child does is he tries to correlate this white coat with the ambience of the clinic. To make it understand for you, I have drawn the coats in different colors. These colors denote the ambience of the clinic or the clinical setup. So the child tries to correlate. When he went to this setup of clinic, he had pain. But when he went to a setup which was something of different kind, he had no pain. So he tries to correlate with the clinical setup, leaving behind the white coat. This is known as discrimination. He learns that not all the white coat, if I would go to any white coat doctor, it is not necessary that I would have pain. So he learns to discriminate. Now, these are the principles of classical conditioning theory. First is acquisition. In acquisition, what the child does, there is a learning of new response from the environment by conditioning, which was the first example shown here. Means the child, he goes to a white coat doctor because of the certain treatment protocols, he had pain. So he developed a new response via conditioning, means वो white coat को relate करेगा with pain. After that, second is generalization. Now, this process of conditioning is evoked by a band of stimulus centered around specific conditioned stimulus. Because of this pain, now this white coat, it has become a conditioned stimulus. क्यों? क्योंकि इस white coat की वजह से child को pain हुआ. So इस white coat को ये relate करेगा, means any doctor wearing this white coat, I would have pain. This is known as generalization. After that is extinction, means removal of conditioned behavior, which was pain, means his thought of pain results if association between conditioned and unconditioned response is not reinforced. Means, see, अब क्या हो रहा है, जब वो white coat के पास जा रहा है, whenever the child is visiting different doctors, he is not having any pain. So this association between the white coat and pain, it is not reinforced. Why? Because he is going to a white coat doctor, but he is not having any pain. There is no reinforcement of the response of the conditioned and unconditioned response. So there is extinction of the fear. Then is discrimination. It is opposite to generalization, means the child now with time, he does not associate pain with white coat. He looks at the different clinical settings and tries to understand that whenever I would go to this particular clinical setup, I would have pain. But the other clinical setup, there would be no pain. So that is discrimination, which is opposite of generalization. So we can say that classical conditioning theory has 4 principles, which is aged. That is acquisition, generalization, extinction, and discrimination. Now, there are certain dental applications of this theory. What are those? See, first, if a young child, okay, he hears the handpiece sound for the first time. He visits a dentist. He has not met the dentist yet. He's sitting in the waiting area, but he's hearing the handpiece sound, which is the initial stimulus, and he is facing certain kind of anxiety. So this is the unconditioned stimulus. Why? Because he has not gone through any particular treatment. He has not experienced any pain, not met the white coat doctor, yet he's having anxiety. Why? Because of the sound of the handpiece. This is the initial stimulus, which is giving anxiety, which is the unconditioned response to the child. Next, in the subsequent time, when the child meets the doctor, who is the neutral stimulus. Why? Because doctor has not given any pain or anything to the child yet. So when the child meets the neutral stimulus, which is the doctor, and he starts using the handpiece. So when the handpiece sound and the doctor, which is the white coat, they are combined, he's having anxiety. Why? Because of his or her previous conditioning with the handpiece sound, which gave him anxiety. This is also unconditioned reflex. Now, when the child meets the doctor alone, he would start having anxiety. Why? Because he has started correlating doctor with the handpiece sound. So he would have anxiety. Now, this is the conditioned anxiety which the child would have. Second example, if we take, see, if a child experiences pain of injection, which is an unconditioned response, unconditioned stimulus. Why? Because first time उसने injection का pain experience किया. So he started crying. This again is an unconditioned response. Now, if a child meets a white coat doctor, which is a neutral stimulus, he is not having any response. He's not giving any response. Now, when this white coat doctor gives him an injection or pain, then he starts crying. Why? Because pain हो रहा है उसे. So this is again an unconditioned response. Because pain is present here. So this is an unconditioned response. In the subsequent time, when the child would meet just the white coat doctor, he would start correlating this with pain and he would start crying. This is the conditioned response. Means in this dental application, what we can see is here, first, if the child is having any, child को अपन ने कोई injection दिया, he had pain, he started crying. When he met the doctor or the dentist, he had no response. He gave no response. Why? Because usko koi bhi, there was no stimulus to him. No? There was no stimulus at that particular time. This is the neutral stimulus. There was no pain which the child was experiencing. Now, when the dentist gave him any particular injection, means he had pain because of this injection. So he started crying. Now, in this visit or during this time, what happens is the child correlates this pain of injection with the dentist's white coat. So whenever he or she would see any white coat, he would start crying. This is the theory of classical conditioning, or this comes under theory of learning and development of behavior. Thank you. I wish you all happiness and success.